Man, leave it to Ken Wiebe to come out here with the crazy ideas that are giving us so much inspiration towards having some very deep hockey talks. So let's go over onto Sportsnet and take a look at what exactly Wiebe opened up with on his newest Jets mailbag article. This article is titled, "Are the Seattle Kraken a potential Patrik Laine landing spot?" And man, that's not even sugarcoating it, that's not hiding it deep in the article or whatever, that's just straight up, hey, let's talk about Laine and Seattle. This article was uploaded on November 30th, so it's a few days removed from this video's upload, but it is indeed such an interesting idea, because the more I think of it, even though we've been talking a whole bunch about different Patrik Laine situations, different teams you could go to, etc., this one, I think there's a very fair argument to say that it does kind of make the most sense out of all the other NHL teams, aside from, of course, the Winnipeg Jets themselves, as to where Patrik Laine is going to spend his long-term future. Because Patrik Laine right now, he's a 22-year-old right-wing player who is getting $6.75 million a season until the end of the 2020-2021 season. He's going to be eligible for arbitration. He's going to need a new contract. After that, he'll be an RFA. But we've spoken about this a ton, whether or not Patrik Laine's termination from the Winnipeg Jets hockey system is inevitable, whether he'll leave either via trade or via free agency sometime down the line. It's been established several times throughout different Finnish media sources, and we've spoken about it a ton on this YouTube channel. But this article here by Wiebe goes over a different idea as to where he could end up. Let's go over this right here. So, the Finnish forward's name has dominated the headlines and rumor mills this offseason, with speculation accelerating that Laine and the Jets are more likely headed for a divorce than an extension. But we'll get to that in a moment. With some additional time myself, there's a working theory I just can't shake when it comes to a possible landing spot for him. Wiebe then talks about how exactly Laine is good and how the best case scenario is that Winnipeg keeps him long term. He plays his entire career as a Winnipeg Jet. He retires as a Jet, I don't know, sometime in 2035 or whatever. I don't know the timelines of these things. But hey, that sounds about right. He plays his entire career in Winnipeg. He has, I don't know, 600, 700 goals by the time everything is said and done. He's one of the best goal scorers of all time, and he rides off into the sunset. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. We've seen the conflict between Patrik Laine and the overall Winnipeg Jets coaching staff, the fact that he wants to be a first-line number one winger guy, but he's not being played as one. He's being played as a top six, second-line right-wing player, which isn't the maximum capacity, you could say, for a guy like Patrik Laine, which opens the discussion up to a different idea. If it's not Winnipeg that Patrik Laine spends his NHL career at, where is it? Since Laine will be looking for a raise on a long-term deal, not a lot of teams have either the salary cap room or are willing to deliver the type of return package required for a player of Laine's caliber. Which brings me to the Seattle Kraken. Wiebe then talks about how the Vegas Golden Knights in their expansion draft really just exploited the heck out of so many NHL teams, getting players that were good and getting other players that were good for getting the players that were good, getting first-round picks by getting other players who are honestly pretty okay, and as a result, they built a roster that was able to go to the finals in their very first year. They took a whole bunch of guys who had a lot of stuff to prove. They had a whole bunch of status around the league that said that they were kind of the afterthoughts. And as a result, they came in with fire, they came in with life, and they ended up winning so many hockey games. Which is why Patrik Laine is in this discussion over here too. Wiebe says that, of course, the 30 teams participating in the expansion draft next summer are hoping they would learn a few lessons of their own, but the Kraken have the benefit of not being weighed down by salary cap concerns like most other clubs. I was actually thinking about making a video about this, how the Seattle Kraken can very much just expose the heck out of all these NHL teams because they have money in their side. They're not paying anybody right now. Their cap hit is zero. So they're building something from scratch in a league where other teams are already desperate to try and break away from that cap hit. Because, hey, it's a flat cap for the next 3 years. We're going to have so much trouble for some of these teams that have players who are going to be expiring, who are going to need to be given bigger deals, and who already have some pretty expensive guys. So the Kraken are in a position that the Vegas Golden Knights were not in because Vegas wasn't dealing with a flat cap league. Seattle is, which puts them in a completely different and, some would say, more tactically advantageous situation. Let's go over this right here. Kraken GM Ron Francis is a patient individual, though there could be some temptation to bring someone like Laine into the fold to be a star the organization can build around. Laine has global appeal and a great personality to go with his talents. This isn't to suggest that's a route that the franchise is set on taking, but one would suspect it's something that's at least worth discussing or debating for Seattle. Of course, the price of acquisition remains challenging when thinking of the team that has no players on its current roster and will be looking to add draft picks rather than consider trading some of them in a prospective deal with the Jets. But it's food for thought to get the week started. And I love it, you know? It kind of makes the most sense. You think about a team that is brand new in the NHL. We saw the Vegas Golden Knights go the underdog route, where they took all the underdogs and they put them together and they said, okay, here, this is our team. Vegas was carried by one guy in terms of reputation, and that was Marc-Andre Fleury. Fleury was the guy who was brought over from the Penguins to say, okay, we want to build hockey in Vegas. And you, Mr. Marc-Andre Fleury, you are going to be the face of that. He was the #1 goaltender, a multi-time cup champion in the NHL, who comes all the way from Quebec and is now being accepted full-time into this Vegas system with fans that are so passionate and that want to see this team give it their all every single night. Like it or not, you're going to need a star. And for Seattle, even though you do have the potential of the hometown talents, guys like Tyler Johnson or guys like TJ Oshie, that will be available for taking, or at least projectedly speaking, what a Patrik Laine brings is the star today, the star tomorrow, the star next year, and the star 10 years from now. By the time Patrik Laine is 32 years old, he probably has already potted 500 goals in his career. You want to talk about growing the game on a national scale in Seattle? Get the guy who can go out there and be one of the top goal scorers in the entire league every single year and put him there. Obviously, it's not something that Winnipeg can just decide, okay, here you go, Laine, but the conversation is what Wiebe is talking about here, whether or not it's something that the Kraken could at least consider. And I think it's such an interesting idea, especially if you take a look at how Patrik Laine and the overall controversy and discrepancy in philosophy with the Winnipeg Jets has gone down. This guy wants to be a #1 first-line winger, and he would be that with Seattle. Play him with some of the really nice overpaid guys you got out of that expansion draft, and all of a sudden, boom, 50 goals out of Patrik Laine. No biggie. It's honestly a very interesting idea, but obviously the return is the biggest thing here, because you're not going to give away a Patrik Laine for free. That's it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I will say this. If it gets to a point where Patrik Laine doesn't have a contract for next season, and the chances of him re-signing are marginally slim, hey, that's a guy who is significantly cheaper when it comes to trade value. We saw the same thing with Erik Karlsson a few years ago, how people thought the San Jose Sharks robbed the Senators because what they gave up was not super great at the time. Now it's pretty great because, hey, that first-round pick became Tim Stützle. Josh Norris is pretty good, and hey, they actually have some pretty nice pieces coming back in that trade. But at the time of the trade's actual decision, people thought the Senators lost for sure. So, how about it? If this guy's in a position where he does not want to come back, which has been a possibility as noted by Finnish media outlets, do you go out there and you say, okay, we're the Seattle Kraken, we have acquired a few extra first-round picks and a few extra really nice roster guys because we took advantage of some teams that really wanted to get rid of some contracts because of this flat cap world. Let's work out a deal with the Jets. Cheveldayoff, you want a package that'll make you better on paper? Hey, here you go. Here's a whole bunch of roster forwards. We can even retain salary if you want. Just give us Patrik Laine, because he's not going to re-sign with you guys anyway. And from that perspective, oh boy. You know, it kind of does make me a little bit antsy because I'm a Vancouver fan and I would not like to see Patrik Laine, 10 times a year? Is it 10? I'm not sure. It might be 10 now because there's a new team in the Pacific, but yeah, Patrik Laine, man, in the Pacific Division. Imagine if Seattle is really bad in their first few years and Patrik Laine goes full-on Pavel Bure with the Panthers. He gets 50 goals and 70 points, but the team is still not all too great. And who knows if they get themselves a Connor Bedard or something in the draft. Get themselves a Shane Wright or whatever. And all of a sudden, that duo of Wright-Laine going into the long-term future battles it out with Pettersson and Besser. Ooh, man, so much potential over here for some growing the game type action. I love talking about it. So tell me in the comments what you think about this idea over here. Ken Wiebe, props to you, man, for bringing it up, because it certainly is something that I found value in talking about. But I want you to tell me what you think in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed this video. So that's Trolls 99, and bye.